So let me go ahead and get started. This is our class on essential oils and pharmaceuticals. We are going to kind of compare and contrast how Western medicine, pharmaceuticals, drugs, over-the-counter stuff, how all that compares with essential oils and what some of the differences are and stuff like that. I'm not going to get super scientific because I'm not a super scientific person, but we're just going to kind of talk about some stuff without getting into too many terms and stuff like that. Let me put my disclaimer out there. As a young living independent distributor, I am somewhat limited in exactly what I can say from the FDA. They don't want us to make specific claims about oils and stuff like that. So I'm going to be a little bit vague sometimes. I am also not here to treat, cure, or diagnose any disease, illness, or injury. Trust me, you don't want me treating, diagnosing, or doing anything for your illness, injury, or whatever that other thing was I just said. I'm not medically trained, and that's not my specialty. So yeah, that's not what this is about. This is for general information purposes tonight. So anyway, tonight we're going to cover like how to get credible resources and sources when you're looking for information about oils. Some of the safety aspects of Western medicine and also natural remedies and medicines in general. How the pharmaceuticals work in our body, how essential oils work in our body. Just a couple aspects. We're not going to go real deep into this. We're going to talk about allergic reactions a little bit to both Western and oils. What's possible, what's not, what are the exceptions, and then a little bit off. Kind of a side on this is talking about infusing supplements with essential oils, and then a little bit about, like what other research could be done. So that's what we've got tonight. This is going to take, I'm thinking, about a half an hour, maybe even less. So let's go ahead and jump in. First of all, when you want to find out information about essential oils, I always try to give you what I believe is the truth. Try not to give you any hype. Try not to give you, too broad of a generalization stuff, and I try to get accurate information because I want to know accurate information. But you need to be careful of the sources that you use, me being one of them even. You want to make sure that your sources do some due diligence, okay? All these blog posts and stuff that you see that are real sensationalized headliners, and titles and stuff, they're clickbait. They're trying to get you to click on it so they get paid for the advertisements and stuff like that. So just realize a lot of that stuff is driven by money. Anytime somebody claims something always or never does something, that should be a big red flag, because it's almost impossible to prove an absolute negative that something never happens. Same with always. It's very difficult to say that something always does the exact same thing. God has not designed the universe that way that something always does exactly the same thing. So if you hear always and never, they're almost always not true. So be careful about that. The sources I used for this class tonight, mostly two sources. You can use PubMed, and a lot of the facts that came out in this class tonight are from PubMed. You can also do that scholar.google.com search engine that just does all the medical research papers and stuff like that. But most of this information tonight came from Dr. Jim Bob Hagerton down in Texas, and from Dr. Doug Corrigan, who is a biochemist and a biophysicist in the pharmaceutical industry, or he was in the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of this information came from him through an interview that he did on the Revolution Oils podcast with Samantha Lee Wright. I learned a lot from her. Don't agree with everything they say, but I do learn a lot from there. So that's kind of just a little disclaimer, a little warning put out there. Be careful what your resources are, what your sources are. Okay, let's get into the safety aspect. And yes, I have notes here, so you're going to see me looking off camera a little bit. And I try to always use my notes to make sure I'm saying things the right way. In fact, tonight I'm actually going to read a good bit. Okay, so are there risks involved in medicines? Are there risks involved in essential oils? Yes. There are risks involved in sitting in a chair. There are risks involved in walking down the stairs. There are risks involved in getting into a car, into staying home. Everything we do has risks involved. You just have to weigh the risks against the benefits and make your decisions. But let's talk about like what the risks are with the essential oils and stuff like that. In the United States alone, every year, from the proper use of medications, we're talking, prescriptions, over the counters, whatever, from using them the way they were told to be used, in the United States, there are 1.9 million hospitalizations as a result of Western medicines being used in the way that they're supposed to be used. Every year in the United States, from the proper use of medications, there are 100,000 deaths every year. That's 270 a day. In the United Kingdom, in Europe, not the United Kingdom, in the European Union, in the EU, there are 200,000 deaths per year from the proper use of pharmaceuticals. This is not from overdoses. This is not from drug addicts using things improperly. This is from prescribed and over-the-counter, whatever, from properly using medications. So there are risks involved in that. Now, are you wondering how many deaths there are from the proper use of essential oils? Per year in the United States or in Europe, either one, okay, per year, there are 0. There are 0 deaths reported from the proper use of essential oils. There's not yet been one reported from using them properly. So yeah, they're a whole lot lower risk than using medications properly. And we're going to get into a little bit of why in a minute here. Actually, right now, we're going to talk about how essential oils or how natural remedies, that kind of thing, how they work in your body versus how pharmaceuticals, westernized medicine works. And like I said, I'm going to keep this on regular English terms, except for a couple names I'll throw out here, just to sound a little intelligent, I guess. Anyway, the biggest difference is that in westernized medicine, in the stuff you buy, at the store or whatever, it's designed to have one molecule, and I'm going to read this to get it right. One molecule has one job to seek out a target inside your body. Now, usually that target is a protein that's either made by your body or made by a bacteria or a virus. So that medicine's job is to seek that out and to affect it. One compound or one molecule seeks out an effect, changes, whatever, makes an effect on that one target in your body. With natural remedies, you have a lot of different molecules working together. They go into your body, they interact with many different targets in your cells at the same time, working together. Okay, I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. How do they do this interaction in our bodies? Now, this is the part I'm going to read because I tried to summarize it in my own words, and I tried to, practice and say it out loud, and I couldn't get it right. So this is one page. I'm just going to read what Dr. Corrigan said, okay? This is almost a quote. I did correct a few grammatical things. So, in our cells, we have a very complex network of interactions taking place in all our cells. Scientists call it a cellular interaction network. I'm just going to call it the network from now on. You can imagine in our cells there are many different biomolecules and proteins that are moving around, and each has its own job to do inside our cell. Our human body, our human genome, makes about 1 million different proteins based on the genes in our DNA. So plus or minus 1 million different proteins are inside your body. We actually create, synthesize, make, whatever you want to call it, 1 million different proteins. Each one has its own function. Now, each of these proteins are communicating with one another. There's that network. You can imagine if you were trying to graph it out, it would look like this huge spider web of proteins that are all connected together. They're interacting with each other, they're communicating with each other. And again, that's that network, that cellular interaction network. Okay, you with me still? All right, here we go. In Western medicine, remember we talked about one molecule goes into the network and seeks out one of those million proteins, just one of them. And it tries to interact with that one protein to either block what it's doing or to make it work at a better level or accelerated it. So it's trying to affect that one type of protein in your body. So you're interacting with this whole network in one point of the network. where am I in my notes? Okay, when it does that, it creates a ripple throughout the whole network, and that's where you have unintended and unwanted side effects. What it does, it takes that network and puts the whole network into a new state. It kind of skews it and makes it in a state of disequilibrium. Okay, it kind of messes up how the network's working, because it's like, you picked one thing and put a ripple through the whole thing, kind of like when you hit that spider web. That was my own thing, not Dr. Corrigan. Back to his notes. He says that whole network is now not working at the level of equilibrium, because you've skewed it or perturbed it at one point where it was not designed to be perturbed at. Okay? That's how you get side effects. With natural products, natural remedies, whatever you want to call them, you have many molecules, and each one of those molecules is now seeking out a partner inside the network, and they're all seeking out different protein partners. Essential oils can have between like 20 and 300 different constituents in them. So you've got 20 to 300 different molecules seeking out the protein partners inside your body. So imagine 300 different biochemicals, each interacting with a different protein partner that's inside that network. Okay. Now, when I first heard that, this is me again, not him, I thought, wow, if one is going to mess it up, what's 300 going to do? But it doesn't work that way. He says when you get that many molecules targeting out the proteins, you start to get push and pull. You start to get give and take. You have equilibrium being restored in a more holistic way, because you're not skewing it at one point. Okay, these molecules give, these take. It kind of goes back and forth, and it keeps everything balanced. Okay. He says this is where synergy starts to take place, where you have new activities being realized at any one of the compounds. And you have what he calls antagonism, which is basically where multiple molecules will quench the activity of others that could have been toxic. Remember when we talked about Western medicine? One molecule goes in and targets one protein, and it skews that whole network. And that gives you those unwanted results. There's nothing to counteract that in the Western medicine. But with the essential oils, if it gets skewed over here, then these molecules counteract that, and it keeps that balance going. Let's see, let me go back to my notes on what he said. That's where synergy starts to take place, where you have new activities being realized. And you have antagonism, which is where multiple molecules will quench the activity of others that could be toxic. With a drug compound, you would have side effects. They're there because there are no other molecules coming in to try to mitigate that damage. They're not interacting with any other parts of the network to mitigate the side effects. But in essential oils, you have multiple constituents. If there's one particular constituent that could be toxic by itself, it's not toxic in the context of all the molecules, in the presence of these other molecules, because there's that quenching effect. He goes on to say you have both synergy and antagonisms that take place to reduce side effects and also cause new levels of synergistic activity that aren't realized with pharmaceutical drugs. The bottom line is that with pharmaceutical, you never have the opportunity for synergy, and you never have the opportunity to mitigate side effects. Okay, so that's Dr. Doug Corrigan's explanation of that. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with synergy. Synergy is, let me see if I can word this right. When you have individual things, you put them together, the sum of them working together is greater than the sum of the individuals. You know, it's the old thing, 1 plus 1 and 1, when you put them together, is 2. But for instance, I'm trying to think of the facts right now. I should look this one up. Like one workhorse might be able to pull 500 pounds. Another workhorse might be able to pull 500 pounds. But when you put them together, they can pull like 3,000 or 4,000 pounds together. That's synergy, when the parts come together and what you get is so much bigger than the two parts. And that's what happens with the essential oils. So how are they similar? we talked about how they're different. So how are pharmaceuticals and essential oils similar? There's a gentleman named Dr. David Newman, who's a retired National Institute of Health researchers. He was there for 30 years, and he ran their natural products division. And what he did during like the last 20 or so years of that is he cataloged 1,200 different drugs that he worked with. And he discovered that 53% of those drugs that came through National Institute of Health that he worked with were copies of natural compounds. So over 50%, 53% of those pharmaceuticals were trying to replicate something that they found in nature. It was either inspired by nature or it was directly copied from the natural chemicals found in nature, found in fungi, found in algae, found in bacteria. So you're going to find that something in that Western medicine, the pharmacy, may look a lot like what's in nature. But again, you're talking about that one molecule doing its thing all by itself and not having those 20 or 30 or 50 or 300 other molecules, compounds working with it. They just pick out that one. Now, why do just one? Okay, because in order for it to be called a medicine, it has to be something that can be patented and sold as a medicine. Plants are not something that can be patented because you didn't create them. So anything that comes just from the plant, like an essential oil, you can't put a patent on that. You can't sell that as medicine. And so that's why we have to be a little bit careful. Now, if a company takes that one molecule that they find inside the algae and they pull that out and they replicate it and they do something to it to make it different, they tweak it just a little, they add something to it, whatever, to make it absorb better, whatever. They change it just a little bit. Now they have a novel product, and now they can patent that and they can market that. It has to be somehow novel, because the only way to make money off of a medication like that is to patent it. So that's what they do. They can't call it medicine unless it has a patent as a medicine. So that's kind of how the U.S. laws work. So that's why we have to be careful what we say also. All right, let's go on to allergic reactions. We talked a little bit already about how that one molecule in Western medicine comes into your cell network, disrupts one place with nothing else to mitigate those, and that's how we get the side effects. So what about allergies in essential oils? I have heard this said many times, and I've wondered about it because, again, that negative of it never happens. Anytime somebody says never, my antennas go up. I've heard you cannot be allergic to an essential oil, and I thought, okay, and the reasons they said made sense. So I thought, okay, it's like you can't be allergic to, whatever, a metal. You can't be allergic to a piece of wood. I kind of equated it like that. But here's what he said. Let me flip my page here. Okay, any essential oils that are distilled, steam distilled, the protein molecules are too heavy to get picked up by the steam and carried through the distilling process. So if an oil's been distilled, it doesn't have proteins in it. It's just what it is. It has the oil. It doesn't have any protein compounds in it. If an oil, and all of Young Living's oils are steam distilled, even their citrus ones that come from rinds. Now, some companies get the oils, particularly the citrus ones, they cold press the rinds, which is what Young Living does, but then they don't also steam distill. Young Living does. You guys know I love that company for all that they do. So if you get an oil that's not steam distilled, it can have proteins in it, and that can cause an allergic reaction. Okay, we're talking actually allergic if you're allergic to that. But the steam distilling does not allow the proteins to get through. But let me read what he put here, okay, so I can make sure I get this right. He said chronic overexposure can lead to rare sensitization because proteins are not the only molecules that can produce an allergic response. He said it is rare, but let me explain. There are smaller molecules called haptens, and they can cause reactions. They can chemically react with other proteins in our body, modify that protein, and now that protein becomes allergic. Okay. He said it's transferring an existing protein in our body to become an allergy. And it usually happens from, like I said, chronic overexposure, not diluting when you're supposed to dilute, using at an elevated level. We're talking elevated level over a long period of time. Again, chronic exposure, like using them not as directed kind of a thing. You can develop a sensitization to the oils. He said it's extremely rare, much less rare than it would be a side effect from medications. I love those commercials where for these medications and the side effect list that they give you. It's like, oh my goodness. Anyway, okay. Slightly different topic, but still talking about over-the-counters and stuff like that, is supplements. Young Living has a lot of supplements that have oils in them. And it's like, why do you put oils in a supplement? There's actually a lot of research being done by pharmaceutical companies right now. They're trying to figure out all the benefits and the cost and whatnot of putting essential oils into their supplements. And so I thought that was really interesting, because they're trying to see how much the essential oil helps to increase the permeability, the absorption of your tissue, your skin, or some of your tissues inside of your body. So they're realizing that the essential oils are helping these nutrients be absorbed by the tissues in our body. We know that essential oil molecules help with the delivery of other molecules once they get into our system, so that's a really good thing. They are fat soluble. Much of our tissue inside of our body is fat soluble. Our skin is, and a lot of the inner tissue as well is fat soluble, and so they're very friendly to our body. Fatty likes fatty, and water-based likes water-based. So a lot of our fatty tissues do well with the essential oils. Essential oils, we said, can help transport the molecules. Now, whether that's a nutrient or whether that's a medication, the essential oils can help to transport them into the tissue of our bodies. And essential oils do increase the bioactivity. Dr. Corrigan said there's still a lot of research that needs to be done in this area, and different companies are trying to now patent oil-infused products because they're really realizing what a benefit that is. Okay, then lastly, let's see what time it is. Oh, 8:53. I told you it'd be about a half an hour. We're just about perfect. Dr. Corrigan, again, this biophysicist, biochemist that a lot of this information came from, said there are several areas where he would like to see more research. So I just thought I'd throw these out to you too. That synergy, all the compounds working together. He said they've mapped out a few compounds interacting with a few compounds and what that does. But he said they've not done 200 compounds interacting with each other. And he said what they found a lot of cases is that you have this compound here that can basically open the door, but can't do anything else. This compound over here can do something, but it can't get inside the door. But when you put the two of them, so this one can do nothing because it can't get in, and this one can open the door, but it doesn't do anything other than open the door. But when you put the two together, you now have an open door and something that can affect a change. And that's kind of that synergy thing. This is a zero by itself, this is a zero by itself, but you put them together and you've got a whole lot going on. So he'd love to see more study in the synergy with all those different compounds working together. Mapping out those proteins that the essential oils like to target. He said there are some proteins, now I'm not saying essential oils, I'm saying some proteins, excuse me, that can reduce inflammation, but when you add this other protein with them, it's like a little tiny bit of it, and they reduce it 10 times more. And they would like to see how the essential oils interact with all of that. Whether or not, how essential oils affect our gene activity. Our genes get turned on and off, and as they get turned on and off, they make more or less protein. And so he'd love to see more study there. Genetic differences. We know that we're all different. What gives me a headache might not give you one. What relieves my headache might not relieve yours. Same with pretty much everything that we take into our bodies. Everybody's body reacts a little differently, and they'd love to do more studies in that. And then just in general, more studies with humans. Now, why don't we do a lot more studies with humans? Because nobody wants to fund it, because essential oil studies don't really help all those big companies that are funding most of the research out there. It's a little bit more liability when you're experimenting with humans. It's more expensive, and because, like I said, because you can't patent it, a lot of companies aren't really interested in doing the research. There's a little bit of money for research, but not nearly like there is for other stuff. Most of our information about essential oils comes from a lot of the ancient civilizations and some of the other cultures that are out there, because, again, since it can't be patented, it can't be referred to as medicine, and we can't say certain things about them here in the States. So what we do have, though, is we have millions of essential oil users, even within the Young Living by itself, not counting all those other companies out there that make their own kinds of oils. Just Young Living, you've got over 1 million members who are trying the oils themselves. They're looking up something in their reference book and seeing 3 or 4 or 5 listed and trying this one. Next time they have the same thing to look up, they might try another one. They see which one works better for them. And so don't be afraid to try a different oil. I have gotten to the point where I go through my rack of oils, and I don't do this every day, but when I think about it, I walk by, I pick up the next bottle, I open it up, I sniff it, I get a few good whiffs of it, and I put it back. I figure my body knows, as those little molecules go through my bloodstream, my body knows where it needs it, and my body will pull that where it needs it. Just like when you get nutrition, your body knows what to do with that. Your body knows how to utilize it. It's the same with the essential oils. When you get it in there, your brain, God has made your brain and your body in a way that it knows what it needs, and when it gets it, it knows how to use it. So don't be afraid to using common sense, using the brain that God has given you. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. Use your common sense. If you don't have peace about something, don't do it. But don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. The word experiment can be scary. Don't be afraid to try something, especially if you've looked it up and it's one of the ones that's recommended. Give it a shot next time and see what you think. I'd love to know how it worked for you. If you can share it in the group without being too specific of, injury, ailment, injury, those things that we can't talk about exactly. Disease. I can't even think of it right now. Anyway, but yeah, share with us in the group. I'd love to hear how it's going with you. And if you have any questions, this was real general, I know, but it's kind of like the level where I am scientifically. I can give you the link if you want to listen to this podcast. It's online, and it's also through a podcast app. Either way, you can get to it. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments below, and I will try to find answers for you if I don't know the answers, because I'm still learning all the time. I love learning about this stuff and sharing with you guys. So anyway, I'm glad you could come. This was a short one tonight. Sometimes short is good because life is busy, I know. So I will be talking to you guys later. Have a good night. Bye-bye.